So listen to this insanity. So the big business in the House of Representatives yesterday was passing Joe Biden's and Democrats' $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. This happened yesterday. It passed without any Republicans voting for it. We already talked about that. OK, but that wasn't the end of the legislative day for the House of Representatives. Immediately after passing this bill, the COVID relief bill, the House went into debate about a gun bill. And on days when major legislation is passed, very often you will have more news stations and YouTube streams around the world, even streaming what's going on the floor of the House of Representatives. And it just so happened that because the House went into debate over H.R. 8, H.R. 8 is the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019. Remember that 90% of the country supports universal background checks on any gun transaction, period. But most Republicans in the House don't support it. And because people around the world, after the vote on COVID relief, were still watching the House proceedings, I started getting email from viewers. I got an email from a viewer in Belgium saying, David, did you see that insanity that Lauren Boebert said about guns on the floor of the House? A viewer in the UK wrote to me and said, David, did you see Congressman Madison Cawthorn saying, come take my guns on the floor of the House? So I checked it out, and it is truly the stuff of horrors. The world cannot believe how ridiculous a large portion of our country and our elected officials are on the topic of guns. Let's look at some examples. Here is completely vapid Trumpian Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn telling the speaker, I know you want my guns. Well, try to take them from me.
You want my guns. I know it. We all know it. Well, Mr. Speaker, you can come and take them. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York.
This is one of the foremost legislative bodies in the United States. And Madison Cawthorn is yelling at the speaker to come take my guns. The world is laughing, crying, horrified. You pick it. Lauren Boebert went to the microphone and argued against universal background checks based on a story of a man beaten to death outside her restaurant in Colorado. But the story is a lie. The man she's referring to actually died of a drug overdose. Not only is this insane, it's also a lie. Take a look at this.
There was an altercation outside of my restaurant where a man was physically beat to death. There were no weapons involved. He was beat to death by another man's hands. I have a lot of young girls who work in my restaurant, and we needed an equalizer.
The story is known to be a lie. So it's a fake story. Then Republican Congressman Chip Roy came to the microphone and started referring to how he has all these weapons, but he's not going to tell the government what weapons he has. Defiant and principled speech. Take a look.
Texans, Americans, the government is never going to know what weapons I own. Let me be clear about that. It's not going to happen.
People all over the world see that and they ask rightly, what the hell is wrong with the United States of America? Well, these people are what's wrong. Then Republican Congressman Thomas Massie also argued against universal background checks on the basis of a hard to follow hypothetical story about the victim of domestic violence who needs a gun to make it through the night. I challenge you. Follow this hypothetical story.
How many of those 112,000 were prosecuted for that crime of trying to acquire that gun? According to the DOJ, 12. 1, 2, 12 in a year. Who were the other 100,000? Imagine, just imagine now that you're the victim of an abusive relationship, and after 5 years, you've summoned the courage and the resources to separate from that relationship. But things have escalated, and now you've decided it's time to acquire the means to protect you and your children. So you go to the gun store and you try to buy a gun. The clerk presses the computer button. It says denied. You ask the clerk, why was it denied? I don't know, this happens sometimes. Maybe you had a similar name to somebody else in the database. You can't buy a gun today, tomorrow, next week, not ever. You've been denied. So you go to a friend you've known for a long time. Your friend says, I'd like to help you. You say, well, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night. The friend says, I'd like to help you, but don't you know H.R. 8 passed, and it was signed by the president. I can't spend a year in a cage. Good luck tonight.
Now, what's extra dumb about that story, actually, there's a bunch of stuff that's extra dumb about that story. First of all, maybe the person he's describing should call the police if they think they might not make it through the night unless they have the imaginary gun in the hypothetical shootout. But the problem that Congressman Massey brings up, someone might be wrongly denied a gun because their name matches that of someone who actually can't own a gun. Whether background checks are universal or not, we already have some background checks. Like the name confusion could happen regardless of whether the background checks are universal or not. It's a very strange example to argue we shouldn't. That's an argument for no background checks at all. We already have some background checks, not really an argument against making them universal. So absolutely incredible. And the world doesn't get it. The world doesn't. Why is it so embarrassing here in the United States? These are deep cultural, educational, religious, in some cases, issues. They are economic issues as well. In fact, that shouldn't be written off. There is an economic component to what we are seeing here. But we have some of the most radical people we've ever had in the House of Representatives, and they really have some serious problems, personal problems, no doubt. But also, these are just the last people that we should have making law. So another humiliating day globally for the United States, brought to you this time by the likes of Lauren Boebert and Madison Cawthorn and some of these other people. Let me know what you think when you see these rants on the floor of the House. And then remember, Friday, March 26th, one day, huge membership special. We had a tough February from the standpoint of memberships. We are trying to recover. I'm getting so wound up. I just punched my mic. We are trying to recover. And so Friday, March 26th, we will be doing a mass mailing to everybody on our newsletter. You can sign up at davidpakman.com for the newsletter with a one-day, really powerful membership special. I would love for you to be one of the people that gets on the newsletter and signs up on March 26th. All right, we'll take a quick break and be back right after this. One of our sponsors, PureVPN, is giving you 47% off a one-year plan, which comes out to less than $6 a month. PureVPN makes you anonymous online, and you can trust them. They're the only VPN with an always-on third-party audit, verifying that your internet activity is not being logged. PureVPN keeps you safe from hackers, prevents you from being spied on by your ISP, social media companies, government surveillance. It lets you stream shows and movies that aren't available in your country. PureVPN is super fast with over 6,500 servers, and you can use it on all of your devices with 10 devices logged in at the same time. You can try it for a week for just 99 cents, and you'll get 47% off a one-year plan, which is less than $6 a month when you go to davidpakman.com/VPN. The link is under this video, and you'll even get an additional 10% off when you use the code Pakman.